Breonna Taylor should be alive today. The Justice Department has charged 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers with federal crimes related to Ms. Taylor's death.
Say her name! Breonna Taylor!
Y'all learning what we've been seeing was the truth. That they shouldn't have been there and that Breonna didn't deserve that.
4 current and former LMPD detectives arrested and federally charged for their roles in the raid that killed Breonna Taylor. The U.S. Attorney General announced their indictments today.
Travis Ragsdale and the WDRB investigations team has been digging through the documents. You have been following this case, Travis, since the beginning.
And this is where we are now. More than 2 years later, Breonna Taylor was killed back in March of 2020. Now we're here. 2 current and 2 former detectives charged by the feds. 3 of the officers were charged with crimes related to the warrant that was used to raid Taylor's apartment. Let's start with Joshua Janes. He's charged with the most crimes and is the detective who signed the warrant. According to the indictment, Janes knew that there was false and out-of-date information on the warrant when he wrote it. Specifically, that he verified through a U.S. postal inspector that a known drug dealer was receiving packages at Taylor's apartment. We know now that he was not. Janes is facing 3 charges: a civil rights violation, conspiracy, and falsifying records. His partner was Kelly Goodlett. She is charged with conspiracy. Prosecutors claim that she and Janes conspired together to try and cover up the fact that there was false information on that warrant. The indictment says that she and Janes met in a garage to get their story straight on what Janes put in the warrant. Then there's Kyle Meany, a sergeant. He was the sergeant who oversaw this whole operation. He's charged with civil rights violations and making false statements to investigators. Finally, Brett Hankison. He is not charged related to the warrant. Instead, he's charged with firing his gun blindly into Taylor's apartment. Prosecutors call it an unjustified use of force that shocks the conscience.
And Travis, the WDRB Investigates team has been looking into the issues surrounding this search warrant since early on. In fact, our early reporting plays a role in this indictment.
Correct. That reporting is cited by prosecutors in the indictment for Josh Janes and Kyle Meany. And it all has to do with those packages that Janes said Taylor was receiving but wasn't. Here's the story that we wrote back on May 16th, 2020. We spoke to the U.S. Postal Inspector, who told us emphatically that there was no suspicious packages going to Taylor's apartment in spite of what Janes wrote. The day after we published that story is when prosecutors say Janes and Goodlett met in a garage to come up with a plan on how to lie about how they came up with the information that ended up in that warrant. Shortly thereafter is when prosecutors say Janes began lying to investigators about how he got that information.
All right, Travis Ragsdale, thank you for your reporting.